Marge and I used to work together at the church office. So those were the years before the book was published. And every once in a while, she'd be telling me about the work she's doing on it. And she wants to publish a book. And I kept thinking, man, that's pretty ambitious. I mean, that must got to be a big project. And sure enough, it was. It took a long time.
Yeah.
And it's a
Well,
long book. I
well,
can see why it took so long to write.
actually, that the book was like 500 and some pages, and then we had to cut it down because it was just too long. But I think I did get most of the important things in there.
Did you do the typing yourself?
Yes.
Boy.
Yes.
Yeah, she's
All the
second-
words are mine.
Oh, boy.
So did you have a ghostwriter? No, I did it myself.
Very good. Well, it's officially time, so we can begin however you want to do that now, whoever's running the book club generally. Unmute.
Excellent.
Well, I was just wondering if there's any questions that you have, or should I sort of start from the beginning?
So I think, Marge, if you would be willing to give a little bit of a background, that would be great. And then anyone who has some questions, I have a question here, but anyone who has questions can either put it into the chat, and either Sarah or I can read it to you, or else can unmute themselves and ask the question directly.
Looks pretty good.
Okay. Well, the background is Bruce was told that he had to go overseas and that they needed somebody in Tehran or Tel Aviv. And I opted for Tel Aviv, but as it turned out, they said nobody was going anywhere until the budget office position in Tehran was taken care of. So Bruce left the 24th of September and got there the 25th. And it was taking like 3 weeks for him to get a letter from me. So what I did was I would take letters that I wrote, and I would take them to a former colleague of his who worked with him, who lived in Silver Spring. And she would take my letters to her office. And that way it wouldn't take like 3 days to get to the State Department. The one thing I have to tell you is that Sue Petro was the one that called me to tell me Bruce was a hostage. She had talked to me the day before at Vespers and said, "Have you heard from Bruce?" And I said, "No, but I'm going to call him tonight and I'll let you know what happens." So the next morning she called me at 8 o'clock and she said, "Did you get in touch with Bruce?" I said, "Yeah." She said, "Well, what did he say about the demonstrations?" And I said, he said, "Oh, they chant and scream and they pray, but it's nothing to worry about." That was like 3 o'clock in the morning, Sunday morning. And it was like 3 hours later that he was a hostage. And when Sue called me in the morning, she said, "Did you hear that, the embassy in Tehran was overrun?" I thought, that can't happen. State Department didn't call me. It never could happen. And she said, "Turn on the radio and listen to," I think it was WMAL. And she said, "It's the first item in the news." And that's when they said, "The embassy in Tehran has been overtaken by militants and all of the personnel have been taken hostage." That was the first that I heard about. And it was a shock. I kept thinking, that can't happen. State Department never called me. No one called me from State Department. And I thought, that's not the way things are done. Usually the military sends a chaplain or something, but that did not happen. So I had been talking to Pat Lee, who was also a former hostage wife. I had met her husband right before Bruce went over to Tehran. And I asked him about the demonstrations. So there's nothing to worry about. They're ignoring Americans at this time. So I called her, and I guess I must have woke her up. And so I told her, she said, that could never happen. That could never happen. And I said, Pat, here's a phone number. Call yourself. Because I had called State Department on their watch number. And it was like, are you with the press? No, I'm not with the press. Why are you calling? Well, my husband is the budget officer in Tehran. I want to know what's going on. And it was also like, here's another phone number. So they gave me like 3 phone numbers to call. And finally, the 4th number, I guess I got, they said, ma'am, here's the number to the task force. And I thought, oh, darn. I didn't say darn, but anyway, I thought, this is not good. This has actually happened. Even though at that point I was still thinking, this can't be happening. So anyway, as you know, as I said, it was Sue Peter that called me in the morning and said, listen to the news because it's the first item and it'll be on at 9 o'clock. So for the rest of the day, I was trying to call State Department, and they had nothing to tell me. They kept saying, we have no further news. I said, well, when did this happen? And they said about 3 o'clock our time. And so I remember trying to figure out like when I had been talking to Bruce on the phone, and how many hours difference was in the time. And I was just totally flabbergasted. And then of course I had to tell my children. That was very difficult because Chris was 9 years old. Matt was 13, Debbie was 15. And she had been talking to Bruce that night before about her 16th birthday and how she was going to have a party. And she was going to have music of the 50s because that's what he liked. And it was really difficult because, how do you tell a 9-year-old that his father is actually a prisoner? So I think to myself, my 3 kids have gotten through this. They had the worst teenage years that they could possibly have had, but they all came out of it being stronger people, being good citizens, and being kind to each other and to other people. The one thing I didn't want anybody to think it was that like I was too good to talk to them. So I went out of my way to talk to people and answer their questions and let them know that whatever we did, we did together. And even though they had some kids that were Muslim that were in their school and would say nasty things, they still kept it together and just try to, get through this. And that day and the next day, I had phone calls from all over the world, from Korea, from all parts of the United States, from New Zealand, from Alaska, all people that we had had time with in the Foreign Service that we knew. And that, of course, was very gratifying because so many people knew about it. And I thought, well, if Bruce hears anything, he'll know that it's that it's not being kept quiet, that everybody knows about it. But evidently he wasn't getting any of that news. So for like 3 days, I didn't get too far away from my phone because kept ringing and ringing. And you have to think back to that time, there were no cell phones. The only thing that you could do is have a telephone or the post office to communicate. And so it's a very different situation. It's like kids nowadays, you say that they didn't have their own cell phone. It's like, what do you mean? Everybody has a cell phone. No, we had one phone, and it was really hard to make calls overseas. And the one time that I got very upset because I had been writing to Bruce, and he somehow got, I guess, a message out saying that he had not gotten any mail from me. And so I called the task force office and spoke with Marion Precht, who was the wife of the guy that was in charge, Henry. Anyway, and I told her, I said, I am so mad. I said, I feel like calling them and giving a piece of my mind. And she said, just a minute. And she came back on the phone, and she said, here's the phone number. Go ahead and call. And then I thought, oh, that was not really what I meant to do. I was just venting. But she said, here, call. You might get through. And I did call. And of course, I got to speak to someone who didn't speak English. And then I asked if there was somebody that spoke English, so they passed the phone off to somebody else who spoke very, very little English. And I was trying to ask him, if they would send me letters from my husband. Well, who is that? Bruce German. Could I talk to him? No. And most of that I did record. And so it is in my book. I have a lot of conversations with the militants. And it got to be the point where Bruce said that right before he left Tehran, they asked him if they would be in his book. So evidently they were sort of hoping that they'd be, I guess, part of the book, and they might be famous. But anyway, it was a very, very trying situation. I was always afraid that I might say something that would get him in trouble. Of course, there was the time that they did the mock execution where they had everybody against the wall in their underwear, and they kept clicking a gun in their ears. And then there was also one journalist from here in the United States who claimed to be his brother. And he got to talk to Bruce, and then Bruce found out that, this is not my brother. And then after that, they would not let him come to the phone for any reason. So those were the things that I just thought, how could a person do that when they know that the hostages were so vulnerable? But it's just, I just felt that, this crisis went on forever. Sometimes it was just boring, but other times it was very scary, especially when they did the rescue attempt and the 8 commandos were killed. My children still put their names on Facebook every year on April 25th because they feel that they went above and beyond and did something to try to save their father. So anyway.
Hey, Mom.
Yes.
I don't know if you can see the chat box, but you got a couple of questions.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I didn't see them.
Read them to you, Marge, if you want. That way you can. Ginny asks if you kept a diary. Did you keep a diary during that time, or?
I just took notes because every time I went to State Department and we had meetings, I would write down everything because I had to convey that to my in-laws because they were very upset that I was not telling them everything that they thought I should be telling them. And as a matter of fact, the one time I got a call from State Department asking me if my brother-in-law was mentally incapacitated
Oh, wow.
because he would just rant and rave and we are his family and she's only his wife, and if you don't call us, we're going to call our congressman. And he went on and on and on. So anyway, but you know they said, well, how do you get along with your in-laws? And I said, well, everybody has their own way of handling stress, and so that must be their way. But my mother-in-law did not like the idea that, like, they said, I will call you, but because you're his wife, but your mother-in-law is insisting that we call her. And so I said, well, I live here in DC. If I want you, I can call you. So you can call her. That's okay. And my sister Lovey, who passed away 3 years ago, she said to me, you are his wife. They are supposed to call you, not his mother. And I said, well, Bruce is under enough stress as it is. I don't want him being under any more. I said, and that really would make it harder for me. And of course, whenever he got to call here, I think twice. And the one time Debbie said he called, and of course I was at a meeting at State Department, and she said he was in tears. I wanted to speak to your mother, and she said she's not here. She's at a meeting. So, and I think the militants knew that. They knew that there was a meeting in DC, and so I think they had like 6 of the hostages call their homes so that they would be disappointed that their family members were not there. So it was all these little tricks that they did to make things more stressful. So what other questions do I have here?
Paula asks, has the State Department contacted you regarding your book?
No. I was going to send it to them. There's a possible outlet in the Foreign Service Journal that says in their own right, WRITE.
Mm-hmm.
And all of the books there are written by other people who have been in the Foreign Service, and they talk about items that they want to, I guess, let people know about. People that, when they've been overseas, and some things that happened that were good and some that were bad. So I'm thinking that I might try to get my book added to their list. So we'll see. That's in the future.
In the same vein, Martha Backstresser asked, did you have to get pre-publication approval from state?
No, because it's my particular story. And there's nothing in there, no secrets or anything. So especially like anything that would be detrimental to our country. This is oops,
Sorry about that.
sorry about my cuckoo clock. And it's at the wrong time.
It is. I'll stop this so it doesn't keep going.
Okay.
Give it a second.
Well, it just wants to go on.
Yeah. Okay. So, but no, I just this has nothing to do with intelligence. The everything that was on the hostage crisis, everything was on the news. So it was nothing that they had to talk about.
So there are also in the chat a number of comments, Sarah is downloading those comments and she'll send them to you in an email so that you have
Okay.
comments. I'm just asking the questions that came from them.
Okay.
I actually have a question. So I thank you, Marge, for being willing to share so much about that really painful time in your and your family's life. A few times in the book you mentioned that you sometimes got more information from WMAL or the military families. And I kind of wondered about what you thought about that, if you thought that was because the State Department was unprepared for this sort of a thing at that point and didn't have a protocol, or whether it was more of a
Yeah, I think that was it because, the military has handled this forever. They know what to do. As Jim Mayer, who was a friend of ours, he would say, well, what is the State Department doing for you? And I say, well, what do you mean? He said, well, are they doing your grocery shopping? Are they answering your phone? And are they helping you? Are they taking care of your kids? And I said, no. And he said, well, they should be. He said, if you were one of our families, we'd be doing that for you. And I said, well, State Department feels that diplomatic wives are supposed to be self-sufficient. And he said, at a time like this, no one is self-sufficient. But that was the thing. The military had dealt with, the death of soldiers and a lot of POWs and things like that. So they had everything in place with how to take care of people and what they needed. And State Department did not have that. So I just felt that we were the guinea pigs.
Paula asks in the chat, and maybe she's going to have to explain the question, do you actually have some incriminating information? Paula, you want to unmute and elaborate a little on the question?
Well, Marge was saying that, they were thinking there's nothing in her book that is incriminating. So along those lines, between she and the State Department, was she ever aware that some of that could be considered incriminating, to these militants?
Well, the one thing that I did get was a secret cable that the militants sent me that came from Bruce Langan, the chargé, that he sent to State Department. And in it, he said, you're letting the Shah come into the United States, and what are we going to do here when we're attacked by the Muslims? And I don't think he ever got a response to that. But I mean, I have a copy of the cable, and it was marked secret. But since it was on the air and everywhere else, it's it was not anything that I told people, by accident. It was already out. And most of this, of course, was how it affected me and my kids and our family, even after the crisis was over.
One of the things, Marge, that I found really interesting, Martha Baxter writes, is there any chance of an audiobook? And I actually have the same question, Marge. I think it would be great if you read it.
If I read it in an audiobook, oh dear. I will have to think about that one because I don't want to stumble over my words and all that.
They can edit things together.
I don't think I ever read a book, a nonfiction book, where I knew the people involved. I felt at times when I was reading it as though I was prying in someone's private affairs or reading someone's diary or something.
Yeah.
I felt a little bit uncomfortable every once in a while. And I know you were sharing it, and I wasn't doing anything wrong. I would like to add also that I was going to uh, liturgy or going to churches at Bowling and Andrews before I joined St. Mark. So I didn't know you or your family, but we were praying for you or for Bruce every Sunday. And I think they were probably doing that all over OCA churches. I don't know for sure, but we were certainly praying for you at Andrews where I went for liturgy.
Yeah, well, when Katie found out about Bruce, she said, come to church. I said, I can't because the State Department might be calling me and I have to stay here. And I did send my kids to church, and everyone said they cried through the whole liturgy. And that was hard because I guess I should have had them stay with me, but I just said, go to church and pray for your dad. And of course, Father Basil announced it to the parishioners, and there was this big gasp when they found out that Bruce was a hostage. And of course, every Sunday after that, he would always say, we pray for our own Bruce Sherman. And of course, that was like turning on a faucet. And I would be standing there crying all through the liturgy. And then I'd go up for communion and I'd have tears in my eyes. And then Father Basil would be crying. And it was like, oh my goodness, I have to try to control myself. But it was not easy. It was hard because it went on forever and ever and ever. So, but we did get through it. Thank God for that, because I could not have done it alone.
444 days is certainly an amazingly long time for it to have gone on. And in the book, sometimes it was difficult for me because I would like be reading and then I wouldn't realize that there had been a big gap between the dates until I would go back and read the dates. And I thought, oh my gosh, it's going on and on and on. Even though I was, I was aware of it at the time, I wasn't here. I didn't know you. And so it gave it such a personal and poignant, effect of now having known you, Marge. And I really appreciate you coming forward and telling the world about it. So how long did it take you to write the book?
As Matt says, 40 years. Because I started, at the beginning, I was taking notes, especially at all the meetings and stuff like that. And then I would also just want to take notes because I had to report to my in-laws. And so I wanted to make sure I had stuff for them. And then I was thinking, well, I'm sure that when Bruce comes home, he'll probably want to know what happened with us. But that was not really what he wanted. He just wanted people to know that he was the victim and we were not. So, and I tried to tell him we were all victims because what happened to him really sort of happened to us. But anyway, like one of the things when Chris found out about Bruce being a hostage and, that they were keeping him there, he said he was, I think, 9 years old then. He had his birthday. And he said, Mom, why won't they let my daddy come home? And that just broke my heart. Excuse me. And it still bothers me. Because, I think of him being 9 years old, and it's so difficult to explain to a child, why these things happen and why these people act the way they do. But he did very well, and he had a good teacher for his grade school, and they had the Navy band there one time, and so she had him sitting next to her while he listened to the band, and I had someplace else that I had to be that day, and I still regret that I didn't cancel that and go to the school to be with him. That's where I should have been. So I, I made mistakes, but I tried not to. I tried to do everything I needed to do to be with my children. So,
So Paula writes, you still have tears. I as well had tears. I think you aren't truly over this, are you? So, no.
well, only when it affects my kids. It still is very, very painful. And especially too, I mean, we were so happy when he was released and he came home. And then things just went sour from there. I mean, something we never thought would happen. And he decided that he didn't want the responsibility of a wife and three kids anymore. And he said he was leaving. So that's what he did.
Marge, in the book and what you wrote, it seems that Father Basil Summer was very supportive and helpful to you, as were many people in the church. But do you know if Father Basil's aware that your book has been published?
I sent him a book.
Oh, good.
He said, I didn't even know you wrote a book, and here it came in the mail today. I'm so glad. And I had to look to see where I was in the book. And that sounds just like Father Basil. So I don't know whether he read it, but I did send it to him, one of the first copies with
Very good.
with a signature so that he could have it. And I thanked him for all the support he gave me, because he came here a few times, and he would be here at the house, and we'd be praying and crying, and we'd be discussing what was going on, and he was very, very supportive. And if you know Father Basil, when you cry, he cries.
Yeah. Sometimes he cries before you cry.
Oh yes, he did. So anyway, but it's uh, he was really wonderful, and the one time, I guess it was like in July of 1980, I was at Vespers, and I went up to kiss the cross, and I said, Father Basil, I am sick of this. I want something to happen now. And he says, well, I don't know how we can have that happen. I don't know how I can help you. And the next day, the Shah died. And then I thought, no, this was not this was not what I had in mind. But it just turned out that way. And of course, then the Iranians were mad, because they did want that, I guess, us to send the Shah's body back so they could dismember it. But not they have their own ways of handling things, and was not too nice, because with them, you do something wrong and they cut off your hand or your foot or whatever. So very different. But the one thing that I did not like is I saw them carrying garbage in our flag, and that just set me off. I am too much of a patriot to see that and not have some kind of an adverse reaction. So,
Marge, I'm glad that after the multiple failings of personnel in the State Department relative to your situation, that you still are not bitter against the government and the country, and that you're still a patriot. So anyway, kudos to you for that.
oh, well, thank you. There were a few people that were really very, very nice and very helpful, but then there were, the others who um, did everything they could to make me feel bad, and they'd say, well, you shouldn't be talking to the news, and the news people, you shouldn't be talking to these people. And I'm thinking, nobody gave me any guidelines on who I was to talk to or not talk to. And so I just felt that they did tell me at one point, you can talk to anybody you want, but don't say that you're talking or speaking for everyone. You're speaking for yourself only. So I thought, fine, that's what I will say.
So Marge, a couple of times in the book, you mentioned about the press hounding you. And so were there some really nice members of the press? I thought that there was one time that you had a really good experience with one.
Yeah, let's see, I'm trying to think of who he was now.
Steve Bell.
Yeah, Steve Bell. He was from, I think, ABC
Good Morning America.
and Good Morning America. And he was he was not local, he was national. And he was very, very nice. As a matter of fact, when when they had the, I guess, the 100th day, which just happened to be my birthday, they did like a recording, and he sent it to me. He said, I thought you might want to like it. I thought you would like to have this. So that was really great. And after that, I would hear from him periodically. And then they had a free the hostage pin ceremony at Georgetown University, and they asked me to speak there. That was the first time I ever gave a speech, and it was about 2 minutes long. But when they called me up to speak, I got to the podium and I started to talk, and my knees were actually knocking together. And I thought, I wonder if people can hear that. and Judge Sirica was there, and the president of the senior class, and Steve Bell. And anyway, my speech was like 2 minutes long, and I turned around to walk back to my seat, and I thought, I am going to fall flat on my face because my knees were shaking so bad. And I just sort of prayed, please, Lord, let me get to my seat without falling down. And so I did get there, and Steve Bell came over to me later, and he said, so how many speeches have you given? I said, that was the first and last. And he said, well, I'm glad to hear your last, because I was beginning to think you'd take my job. And I have no fear of that. That was, I don't know, I told one of the other hostage wives, I said, they asked me if I would do that. And I said, yes. And then when it came time, I thought, what am I doing? Am I out of my mind or what? I don't know how to speak to people. I don't, do any speeches for anybody. And so it was very hard for me, but thank God I got through it one way or the other. And, I have to thank God that I got through this crisis for all 444 days. And also the other people that I knew during the crisis. I don't keep in touch with too many of the other hostage wives. Gisela Ahern, who I was very good friends with, passed away about 3 years ago. She had breast cancer, and that was really sad, because she had a very special, I guess you'd say, German sense of humor. And sometimes she would say things that would just crack me up. And a lot of times we'd go out to lunch about once a month, and she'd say, well, let's see, where should we meet this time? And she'd say, how about the toilet bowl? And I'd say, where is the toilet bowl? It was a restaurant that on the front of the building, it had a sort of oval white thing that looked like a toilet bowl. So we used to go there and meet for lunch every once in a while. But I really was very upset when she passed away because it seemed like she didn't have, she didn't have much of a warning that she had stage 4 breast cancer. So that was hard. Once in a while, I keep in touch with Pat Lee, and she had remarried, and then her second husband passed away. And there's also a Cheryl Olson who lives in Florida, and she calls me periodically. But she's one of those, what I call downers. She starts out talking about something with the crisis, and then she starts talking about her friends who have died and her horse that has died, and so I try not to answer the phone when she calls too much, which is not very nice. But I don't. I just feel that if I don't need to talk to people that pull me down, I'm better off. I do much better. So that's, I think those are the only ones. I didn't keep in touch with many of the military because they had their own group. So that was it.
You want to talk
So-
about New Great Love?
Actually, there were those two questions. Maybe you saw them. Are you in touch with the other, Mary Matrician asked, are you in touch with other hostage families? If so, any comments from them? And Joan asked, do you have contact with other hostage wives? So you answered the question even as they put it through. Good job, Mark.
Yeah. Yeah. The other thing is, I don't know if you heard of the group No Greater Love. I had never heard of them before, and they contacted State Department asking if they could contact me and my children so we can go to a Christmas party that featured the Redskins. And of course, my kids are Redskin fans. And they said that it would be at the um,
Was it like a Dulles?
yeah, Dulles,
Marriott or one of those?
yeah, the Marriott. So anyway, I thought I've never driven there. And they said, well, be here, around 4 o'clock. It's going to be 4 to 6, and we're going to have hot dogs and all that. And the kids can get pictures with the Redskins and get their pictures taken and everything. And the head of the group, No Greater Love, was Carmela Laspada. And I have tried to get in touch with her lately, and she seems to have disappeared off the face of the earth. But she was very, very active with No Greater Love and the children of the POWs, of which there were so many. And especially like the when we had uh, the failed rescue attempt, and they start reading off the names of the children that were left behind, that just broke me up. I mean, I just kept thinking, these people died as part of a group of people that were trying to help your father, and that just that was hard because I just really took everything to heart that all these people were doing above and beyond what they needed to do for me. But anyway, I really appreciate it. I would like to get in touch with Carmela in case anybody knows of her. Her name is Carmela Laspada.
So Kelly Olenek asks, how many hostage families were from the DC area?
I think there were 26. I think there were about 26. And of course, whenever we had meetings, most of them would probably, be at the meetings. Other times, if they weren't, Penny Langen asked me if I would take notes so that I could type them up and give them to the people that were not there. So that was sort of how I got to be secretary of the FLAG group, which was Family Liaison Action Group. And I didn't do that on purpose. I just sort of got into that job. So anyway, but they kept saying, well, you always take such good notes, and everybody will have everything they need. And I thought, yeah, but, suppose they misunderstand something I say. But anyway, most people were fine. And I thought, well, I did my best.
So
So,
I've asked Debbie, since Debbie's on the line here, I've asked Debbie if she would speak for a minute or two, a few minutes about her experience. And she actually wrote a comment that Sarah has copied out for you, but I've twisted her arm a little bit and she's agreed to speak for a little bit. So Debbie, if you want to unmute, you can go ahead.
Okay, I'm unmuted, but I have no idea what you want me to say. Like she said, I was 15 when this happened, and I was a little girl. 15, nowadays is teenage, but I was a little girl, and look at me, I'm still crying too. And no, I'm not over it because I never had closure with him. But yeah, I was 15. I was coming up on my 16th birthday party, which he missed. And I did pick 50s music because I grew up listening to it with him and I loved it. And it was very hard for me because I was the oldest. So I kind of had to grow up really fast because, my mom needed me to help with my brothers, she relied on me. And so I had to step up. And being a teenage girl, I had an attitude. And she'll agree with that. All teenagers do. I just got through most of the teenage years with my own kids. I know they have attitudes. But I really did try to do the best I could to help her out. Going to school was tough. And my grades were not great. I think it did affect my grades.
I don't see how it couldn't affect your grades. Oh my goodness, much less affects people's grades. But did you feel that you had support in some places? I mean, obviously your mom was a huge support to you and you do comment on that, but what about in the schools and here at St. Mark and other places? Did you feel that there were people who were with you?
St. Mark, definitely, like she said, Father Basil, he was always there, and he would always, he would put it in a good perspective, just leave it in God's hands and everything will turn out okay. And as a kid, that's hard to hear and understand and comprehend. School, not so much. My friends sort of supported me, but, I remember sitting in class one day and I was just really, really upset. And somebody that I went to school with just said something, I don't remember exactly what it was, but it was like, you could be a little kinder. And that's when, you need to start thinking about what other people are going through. And that's also hard for kids because usually it's all about them. So at school, I don't think I had a lot of support. I don't even remember speaking to a counselor, although maybe I did. Because again, that was a new type of thing that was going on. Nobody had that happen to them before. My friends were supportive though. And that was when I was 15. So I was in 10th grade and my dad was gone for all of the rest of my 10th grade year and most of my 11th grade year. I don't even know. I know he came back and I was over the moon because I was daddy's girl. And that's maybe why I still struggle with it, because I was daddy's girl. And then he came back, and he was just so different. And he was one of the ones, he couldn't tell you how he felt. He always wrote me letters. He would take me out to dinner when I was at college and he would write me a letter that he would want me to read while we were sitting at the table because he couldn't say it to my face. So I don't know. All I know is that I'm the way I am today, and I think my brothers are as well, because of who my mom is. Because look at her. she got through this, and she got through with all three of us. None of us are drug addicts or alcoholics. And, you know, a lot of people can't say that. If they go through this kind of stuff, they turn to a vice. And she, whatever she did, I don't know what she did. I wish I did, but all three of us, I think, turned out okay.
Bravo, Debbie. You're absolutely right. With a lot less, people turn to those things. Absolutely. Gosh, well, thank you. I also asked Chris if he'd speak for a few minutes.
Yeah, he said he will.
All right, let me see here. I'm so close to her that it could cause feedback, and I don't know if that's the best way to. Yeah. Okay, there we go. I have an idea. I'll start the video. Okay.
If she mutes herself, then you should be okay.
Yes, but she doesn't know how to do that. So hold that thought.
You can.
You're muted. Okay. My mom was just asking you, Sasha, how do you do all this? Okay. Hold on. Sorry. Sorry about that, folks.
You're upside down.
I am. So is she. Why is she upside down?
I don't know.
I'm on the spot.
Okay, you're gonna have to just. I don't know how that's gonna work. You're gonna have to hold it, Mom.
Okay.
Now you're upside down again. Good heavens. Okay, so
Just go ahead.
yeah, I'm gonna go ahead. You all look at my mom upside down, and so yes, the hostage crisis began 6 weeks before my 9th birthday. And so as Debbie said, you know, my dad missed her birthday and mine, and 2 Christmases, and one of my brother's birthdays, because his is in May. Trying to think what, you know, as far as support from school, you know, from students, I guess there were probably some who offered some. And then there were others who were like, oh, he wants special treatment because his dad's a hostage. And I'm like, oh yeah, that makes it all worth it, sure. Teachers were supportive, as I remember. You know, but it was the parish, it was the church. You know, Father Basil, the McCullochs, the Petros, and you know, so many others who rallied around my mom. You know, she'll tell you she is very strong. There's no doubt about that. You know, but she'll also tell you that, you know, she garnered strength from the people around her who rallied to help her. And, you know, organization like No Greater Love and Carmela Laspada, and, you know, friends of ours like Jim Mayer, who we met during the crisis, you know, coming to take us kids to the arcade, you know, back when there was, you know, upright video games at an arcade, you know, Pac-Man and Space Invaders and Missile Command and all that, just to get us out of the house, to take our minds off of it, to give us an outlet where you could call it normalcy, maybe, although most normal kids didn't get to go to a Redskins Christmas party, but it was something to give us something to help us get through the time, you know. And you know, I tell people about, you know, what has happened to us since then, and I don't think any of us is going to be thankful for the crisis, but we can recognize and be thankful for the things that have happened to us only as a result of the crisis. You know, my brother going into the Air Force, moving down to Florida. That probably wouldn't have happened if my dad hadn't been held hostage and he needed some, you know, scholarship type thing to go to school. Well, that's where he met his wife. So that's the first domino. And then Debbie, of course, spent a summer down there with them. And lo and behold, some guy from Birmingham, Alabama, comes, vacationing with some of his buddies to go fishing, walks into the restaurant where she's waiting tables. And you know him as Carl Firestone, second domino. And for ages and ages and ages, I was waiting for my domino. And eventually I was like, okay, I'm not getting my domino out of this, and that's okay. And it was kind of like when I let go of that, then I met Claire. And after we had been dating for, I want to say 7 months, 8 months, I had already decided I was going to propose. But then she sends me an email that she had been in a meeting down at the Navy Yard. She was with this program called the Sea Lift Support Program. And she tells me about this guy who was speaking, and then he came to her and said, well, how do you fit into this organization, blah, blah, blah. And he explained to her how the Sea Lift Support Program came about. And it only ever got funded and off the ground because of the Iran hostage crisis. And that was the job that she was in, going to St. Nick's downtown. She had already become Orthodox. And then she started coming to the Orthodox singles events. And, then I'm like looking up, I'm like, okay, I get it. I get it. That's the icing on the cake, the cherry on top. That was the sign, I guess, I was hoping for. And it's a much longer story than I can condense here in just a short few minutes. But the point is, without the crisis, neither Debbie, Matt, nor myself would be where we are now with our spouses and the kids we have. It wouldn't be. And so I can,
all part of God's greater plan.
yeah. And that's, Mom told us back then, 40 some years ago, Romans 8:28, she doesn't know how, she can't tell us what the future is, but she believed that even through this crisis, somehow, some way, God was going to put his stamp on it, that it was going to work out for good for us. And as kids, that's not an easy thing to grasp and embrace. But there's no doubt in my mind that that's exactly what has happened. And, again, it gets back to our faith, her faith, the church, the parish coming together and rallying around her and us that helped get us through it.
Wow, Chris, thank you. That was terrific to put those things together. That was really great. Amazing.
Yeah, you were a bit more coherent than I was, but thanks.
You were both great. I mean, this your tribute to your mom and, the way that you feel about it. Marge, we're coming to the end of our hour, but I wondered if you would share about in the very beginning. Oh, wait a minute. Joan asks if Katie got to read the book before she died.
We gave JM the book.
Okay. I'm gonna mute myself.
Uh-oh.
All right. Are you still upside down again?
Yeah, I like standing on my head.
Well, okay, there you go. Well.
Okay. I gave Katie the book for Halloween. I guess Chris gave it to JM. I think I had written an inscription in the book specifically for Katie, as I did for Sue, because I wanted Sue to have a special copy. And anyway, I think he did read her some of the comments. I'm not sure whether she was able to see very well or not, but he said that he read her some of it. Now, whether he read the whole book to her or not, I'm not sure. But that was, she passed away so quickly after that. It's hard to know whether she actually knew the end of the book or not. But
Oh, she knew it.
yeah, she knew what happened because she was there with me. And one is she always
Uh-oh. For some reason, I have,
we're down there. She's saying, "Okay, get Chris a beer." He doesn't need. Yes, you have to get him some beer. Let's see what brand does he like. We go through this. Why are you bringing Chris? She's happy because she said I had to. That's what I did. Anyway,
Hey, Chris, she's breaking up bad.
okay. I think, have we lost Marge? I had a lot of interference just beforehand. I wasn't sure if it was on my end or on hers, but then I think Debbie came in and said that it was breaking up.
Marge, this is Sue Pigtro. I just wanted to tell everybody that we were in this together from day one. We spent every evening, Ted Koppel was on TV, and we were hoping that we would get good news. Well, you were the strongest person that I have ever known. You handled this as a trooper. I am sorry I would have had to give you the bad news. And I thought about it, and I cried about that many a time to think that I had to bring such sad news to a person like you. Every day there was something going on. I worried about you because I recall you telling me you were going downtown, you were going to meetings, you left candles burning, and I think my hair stood up. When I worried about you. You had so many times that we cried about things, and I cried when you didn't see me because I didn't want you to be even more upset.
Yeah.
Marge, you went through hell. You went through hell. After they got home, I was at a certain school in Rockville when we heard the news when the president was speaking, when President, what was his name? Sorry. When President Ronald Reagan took his speech, and within minutes, their airplane took off. And I breathed a sigh of relief. And I think of that day lives with me like other important days. And I thought this will be the beginning of the rainbow that is going to come to you. This is going to be wonderful. And we were so happy. Katie and I, we knew that things were we'll get back together. We went together a lot of times, you and Katie and I. And things did. Things were very good for a while. And then things started to break up. You got sick. Things were not happy, not nice things happening. We don't have to go into that. But we were there with you, Katie and you and I. We had so many good times together.
Mrs. Petro,
And yes.
I just want to say that I thank God every day for you and Mrs. McCulloch.
And there were other women too, the whole church. I can't say that I was any different than anybody else because we were all in this together with Marge. with Marge and the children, and it just broke our hearts to see the children, because we all had children too. And I think, I don't know how I would have handled this. I probably would have gotten a rifle and start shooting. But she's a great lady. I live close to her, within walking distance. We've gone through a lot of things, hospitalizations. Marge went in so many times for different, I'm not going to name them all. And she still has problems, so we have to keep praying for Marge. She did a great job with her children. She stood up. She stood up for herself and her children, and she got through it, and she showed us how we should act. We learned from her. We really did learn. And Marge knows that we love her. Our whole family wanted to help her. And like everybody else around her, she taught us how to live. And I'm going to have to sign off, Marge. My grandson has a 30th birthday, and they're waiting for me to put the halupki on.
So I think that
Good luck, Marge, and I'm going to sign off. Thank you, everybody that got involved with this. You're speaking to a very fantastic woman.
thank you.
Not everybody can meet people like this all the day. And it was my pleasure to know Marge for 50 some years, right, Marge? Yes. And you know who brought us together? The church. The church brought us together because we're all from Pennsylvania. And we thank God for that. And we pray so things get even better. In today's situation with the world, it's sort of turned upside down, but we have to believe that there is something better out there waiting for us. So, Merry Christmas, everybody, and a happy, good New Year. But I have to turn off. Have
Okay.
a good day, everybody. Love
Okay,
you
thanks,
all.
Sue.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Love you.
And I'm still living down across the street, so
Okay.
come down and see me. And I say goodbye to everybody. I've got to go and turn my oven on.
Okay.
Okay, bye-bye,
Bye, Sue.
everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Sue.
Okay.
Thank you, Sue. Marge,
You're
I think that was an inspirational message from the book, was your relationship with these other women and with other people in the church and that support. So I really appreciate that you wrote about that, and the fact that you did not lose faith during the whole ordeal, both during the crisis in Iran and then afterwards, the crisis in your own family.
Yeah.
And
But
there are other questions. I wondered if we could close by you telling those who haven't read the book, and even those of us who have at this point, about the what you saw in the sky when you were coming from the airport.
that was shortly after Bruce left for Tehran, and I was coming down Norbeck Road, and as I was coming down the hill, I looked up in the sky and I saw this cloud, and I sort of followed it from like over my left shoulder, and then I was looking, it's going all the way down the hill over to my right, to the like where my right arm would end, and it was a huge cross. And all I could think is, I hope that's not an omen of something bad going to happen. And then I thought, no, it's just my overactive imagination, and I'm upset because Bruce left, and I'm going to be doing all these things by myself.
That was after he flew to Tehran.
And so after that, of course, then the crisis happened, And the State Department kept saying, "Oh, it's only a sit-in. It'll be over soon." And I thought, no, that cross was too big for it to be just a few days. And I thought, I just wonder what's coming next. And then, of course, we found out. It just lasted forever and ever. And every time they said, "Oh, it's going to be over soon," I thought, no, God put that sign in the sky for me to see it. And so it was a huge cross. And it was like all clouds, like puffy clouds in the shape of a cross. And I'm thinking, well, that's really funny because most crosses are not like that. But anyway, then I knew it was put there for a reason.
Well, you carried this cross, Marge, with incredible dignity. Thank you. Thanks for that. And thank you for coming on today. Unless, is there anyone else who has any other questions? Those are the rest of them, except for the comments. There are still comments, but Sarah will send those to you. But
Okay.
any other
Okay, that would be
questions?
good. Any questions?
Okay. All right. Well, Marge, thank you. And thanks everybody who came on. It was really great. We've met with authors several times, Marge, but you're the first one I think that many of us, one or two people have had a personal relationship with before, but this is the first time many of us have. And it was really great to read your book. I'm sorry that it happened to you, but I appreciate you sharing it with the world. Thank you.
Oh, well, thank you very much. I appreciate all of everybody's concern and support.
Marge, it's Father Gregory. I just want to thank you. You're an inspiration to us, and thank you for sharing that whole story and your life with us. I know it couldn't have been easy, really, to open yourself up like that.
Yeah, well, I just, all I kept saying is it's in God's hands. And I know when Father Basil said, if he's not to come back, you have to acknowledge that. You have to agree with that. And no, I don't want to be agreeing with that. And he said, if it's God's will, he'll come home. If not, you'll have to accept it. So I did not want to hear that. So I did not want to accept it. But as it turned out, sometimes I think, well, maybe if he hadn't come home, my life would have been very different. Maybe not good, but it certainly would be different. So that's where I get my inspiration.
Well,
my mother always said, God has a plan for you, and you just have to go with it. So
you certainly have. Certainly have. Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.